While the eyebrow singeing pyrotechnics from the war machines was breathtaking, and the passion of the artilleryman inspired a kind of pro revolution attitude I think we could all really get behind at the moment, the real takeaway for me was viewing the Museum of Archaeology. Even though the show on that stage was mesmerising, really what stuck with me most wasn't on the stage, but yet to come. And as we went around this museum, as we went around in Dublin, you know, bottom the bottom floor of the museum is around the perimeter, like tools, you know, kind of Stone Age, like flint knives and arrowheads and that type of thing. And the collections of these details, you know, they always have like wee plaques and stuff beside it and the predicted locations for where they were found. And a lot of the stuff was like really close to the where we were, you know, or close to like where we were born, even where we've lived a great amount of our lives. Which was just a really odd connection, you know, like you kind of forget that stuff might be sitting at the bottom of a river or something like that, you know, or like the river you would look at every day would hold all these like artifacts of time. But you know, really, as we were going and looking at all these objects, something that stood out to me was a sheath that someone made for their knife, and it was like obviously the perfect size for their knife and everything, and they had the handle of the blade was like to their palm, you know, like kind of sat shaped for holding it. And I just thought, you know, to go out and do that, to get this sheath, to work on the leather, to work on the material like every day, you know, to like beat it and cut it and tan it and do all that Skyrim action. And it was not only obviously the work that went into it that stood out to me, and the fact that obviously it stood the test of time, but it was the idea of that being a task. Like imagine you were given a task to go and get materials and make an item, make a tool that not only you would use like every day of your life and probably held with you for the remainder of your life, but also a tool that could be taken as a symbol and as an example of like a window into your life of your own time period, you know, um something that will tell stories and generate ideas about not only you as a person, but your family, the people in your community, the whole time period of your existence. And it just really was like, I don't know what it'd make. You know, obviously I'd probably write a poem or something silly. But yeah, it just really hit me with being around all of these tools. And in the center, there was like all these gold pieces of gold and stuff, gold jewelry and all. A lot of them had been like dumped into the earth as sacrifice, seemingly, or like an offering. And it was just these collections of tales, these collections of humanity that still existed. You know, predominantly the other one that stood out to me was like this necklace. It was like a black beaded necklace. And I forget the term of the material. Unfortunately, I'm gonna see about fact checking that. But that was found, that necklace, in an urn, and like with someone's remains, you know, and it said there that they likely cherished that item so much that it was one of their favorite possessions on this earth, that they literally took it to the grave, you know, and it was just a very sorrow experience. And that did hit me a bit harder than I was expecting. You know, seeing something that someone cherished so much, they had it their entire life. Something that wasn't even a tool, that it just made them feel more like them. You know, like when you see a cartoon and someone's always in the same clothes. Like Ed's World is a fantastic web show on YouTube, and everyone has like their kind of iconic outfit. And this person probably saw that as like part of their own iconic outfit, you know. So that just really stood out to me. But you know, in continuing on, and to be honest, it's just going to get a bit heavier from here. Continuing on, the next thing we really went and viewed was the bog bodies. Now, the bog bodies are essentially that they are bodies of people that were preserved in bogs for like centuries, like an insane amount of time. And the preservation of these people, again, I'll see about putting some images here, but I'm not going to be putting too much because it is quite intense. And the bog bodies was essentially all of that before, all of that connection to people and craft and story, and just amplified it all. It just amplified everything. One, you're staring at a person, you're like looking down at a person, and a few of them had, their head and stuff remained. One person was just like a torso, and it is just extremely draining to because to do it right, to be respectful, and to take the time in the exhibit. You really got to be with these people, and you're reading into some of the most interesting and also hard things. Like the guy that was just a torso, he had like his arms and his hands as well, and his hands were like remarkably well preserved. To the point that they legit. I mean, my hands are worse off. I don't even do hard labor, and that was the whole thing. Is like the guy's hands weren't heavily marked or scarred or anything, so they kind of predicted. He was like a speaker. He was someone that earned their living or that made their way through life more just speaking to people and dealing in things, instead of being like an apprentice in a workshop or something. But literally, like if you look at your own hands and see how plush the skin is, or see how the skin would come out and puff against where the flesh is weak, um, you can literally see that on his hands. Like it was just honestly, if you've ever had to use like the tea bag or the coffee staining method, and like a bit of homework or something in school, you need to make a letter look like it's really old, and you cover it in coffee or you like dab tea bag over it. It honestly just looked as if the hands and stuff had been treated in that same way. It was insane. But to get back to the point, the stories that were kind of told throughout the progression of these bodies in the exhibit, like I said, you have the insight for your man there and his hands. There's another guy that had his hair was really well preserved. He actually had kind of like a ponytail type of thing, and he had like gel in his hair. Like they were able to find that he had gel and trace that back to France. Like he had French hair gel, which is just so there's elements there of its fashion that he chose, of probably an ego that he had, a sense of identity and doing himself up and not being a disheveled person. There was interest there, there was probably pursuit of finding a partner of some form and getting yourself better and more fashionable for that. And it all just it reminded me that they felt everything that we feel. They felt the hope and the ego and the fear and the love and the anticipation and the dread and all of that it was just such a connection to all of that, especially you see some of the poses and stuff that they were kind of in, because again the bodies for the most part it seemed there it talked about them passing from basically being a ritualistic sacrifice, which I go much deeper into in the article, but some of them were like strangled, or disemboweled and really intense stuff, but it was kind of not all the time a punishment or something. Sometimes it was seen as like an honor, like sacrificing yourself for the community, for the people that you love, and essentially a hope that the season that you would have a better offspring, not offspring, but you know what I mean. You would have a better season or whatever with the land and everything. But one that was also interesting, that was kind of opposite to that, is this man who he was like cut up and stuff, and he was stabbed, and he actually had his it feels odd to say, but he had his nipples cut off because apparently in old Ireland it was a thing supposedly, and I did a brief bit of research about this, and it does seem to be mentioned in some account of as an act of submission, as a way of showing that you are um, subservient to someone, you would suckle upon the man's nipples, like the king, or I guess the lordship, or whatever. Um, So they take that act that man, was mutilated in that way, with them removed as part of his death, or possibly earlier, I suppose. It is like a sign of disrespect, like a sign of taking away the opportunity of earning respect, or the opportunity of presenting others' subservience to you, and that was removed as a sign of disrespect to that person. And that was just so. I mean, that's just so interesting. If you look at the world now in terms of ego and power, and the amount of people that want to feel others have, subservience to them, which I think is extremely prevalent in the stuff I've talked about before, hustle culture, and this join my war room and be a soldier rank and earn your way up to a general rank, and all that crap. But yeah, all of that really hit me. All of that really hit me. And then anyway, look, we'll move on to some lighter stuff. For the lighter end of the season, I suppose what we finished off our day on was the Egyptian exhibit. The Egyptian exhibit was really, really nice, I gotta say. There was like 50 school kids running around with quizzes on their phones just trying to get answers, and there was also like the loudest construction in the world next door. But that is what it is. It was still good. It had the typical Egyptian stuff. It had mummies and the religious artifacts, and I mean even the cats were mummified. I know that's something that's on Horrible History before, but actually seeing a cat, and they even stated that it's possible the cats were bred just for mummification. It's like whoa, what's that about? But to be honest, I was really drained when I got to that exhibit. It took so much out of me doing the whole bog bodies thing, going around all the rest of the place beforehand, that by the time I got there, I was pretty drained. So I'd like to just tell you about my partner's main takeaway from the Egyptian exhibit, which was this little makeup palette that had been carved, and it was actually carved by a little boy, and he carved it in the shape of a fish because he really loved fish, and it was like well used. It was well worn in terms of its condition, and we just kind of stood there for a wee minute, just thinking about the life that was behind this palette. Because this wee boy, obviously he loved watching the fishes in the shallow water when he went with his father, and I'm sure he loved preparing and watching the different dishes of fish be cooked. I'm sure he covered his walls in drawings of chalk fish and stuff like that, and to take the time, to not, because it was unique apart from the other palettes at the time because of that shape. Most other ones were just like a slate, or it was like a face or something, so you could like put the makeup on a face, that was a palette. And it was just the idea of him spending all this time, hour after hour, like carving the wee lines into it, getting it just right. And then after that, the fact that it became, again, one of his favourite items. It became something that he used over and over and over again, whether he was dressing up for an event, whether he was playing, like playing warrior, whether he was helping someone, his family with makeup stuff that they had to do for a traditional ceremony or something like that. It spoke so many volumes about this person's life in a plate of text like that, and it was amazing. It really was, and it was just such a reminder to our people of the past. I mean, I'm not Egyptian, but just to people in general of the past. And really, that's what I wanted to finish on about speaking. Is all of this gave me such a connection. I felt to humanity, to people, and I really cherish that experience so much. And I fear, as we continue to improve with technology, as we continue to take all of those tools and reduce them down into technology, and we become more and more reliant upon things that we don't understand and things that aren't human. We let our human relationships, we let our romantic opportunities, we let our opportunities for friendship come down to these apps, come down to an algorithm, come down to someone else determining our chances of success within such important realms of life. I mean, feeling a connection to people socially, feeling a sense of community, and obviously the romantic connection. I mean, they're some of the most key relationships that you will ever hold in your life, and the fact that we are becoming more and more and more dependent on technology across every way, from young people, young men, being trapped by these fully validating, AI like girlfriends and partners and stuff, and between the people that aren't fallen because they're essentially children fallen victim to those things, the people that aren't, the people in their 20s like myself or through your 30s, when you're trying to date in this app world, this algorithm world. I mean, I've never had to do it. I've never had to do that experience. Thank the Lord I have my wonderful partner. And it just seems horrible. From the men just swiping on everything to try to just get the best odds and see what they can match, to the fact that there's like what, three times as many men as women or something like that on these platforms. And then that doesn't even take into account all the women profiles that are actually bots or AI ran people that are just trying to funnel you into like a content system or a scam. So honestly, I was thinking about that wee boy's life with the fish. And I was thinking about all the stories I imagined him from that little plaque that told me that information. And then I was thinking about all of these people, and I was thinking, our life couldn't even be more different from that wee boy's. Except it could. It could be more different, And as we continue to delve into this full embrace of technology for it to soothe every part, from our romantic interests to our friendships to our entertainment, just being like 6 seconds to 30 to 2 minutes of like short little crap, like useless facts about Breaking Bad or about LeBron James's golfing hobby, and it's the only thing in it is the intention to steal your time for their purpose. And honestly, that's really the takeaway, I suppose, is to be more human, to go out and remember your connection with people, because remember, these machines won't remember us. They don't remember our joy, or our fear, or our sorrow. They just remember our data, and they're not here to help us. They are here as a mission from other people who have poor intent to the highest degree. Oh, so yeah, maybe it's time, we stop rushing forward and we start looking back, and then we'll all be a bit happier at least. All right. Once again, thank you for joining me on an attempt to understand. Obviously, I have had the sun coming in this entire time, and it is about to blind me, so I will get going. Hopefully, the TV pictures, animations, or whatever worked out for this episode. We'll see how that goes, and if it looks great, fantastic. As usual, if you've had a great day, I hope you continue having a great day. Congratulations. If you're not having a great day, that's all right. Maybe it will be better in the next section of your day, in the evening, or the next part. And if you're at the end, then just let it go. Try to lower your shoulders and feel a wee bit freer, and just accept that you'll try again tomorrow. All right. I've been Adam Dean. Thank you very much. I'll speak to you later. Bye bye. This is my relationship mind dump on learning from over 8 years in my current relationship with my partner, and of course, the time before that. This is 3 lessons every young man must know for modern relationships. Because, look, let's be real. Relationships today are more complicated than ever. There's dating algorithms with that just messing with people's intentions. People lie about what they want all the time. There's hope that just that was there, it feels like, is just slowly being stripped away and removed in every conversation that happens online. There's a real crisis out here. And I believe that these are three key things that any young person, really, but especially young men, could stand to learn and build from these lessons. So let's jump right into it. Lesson 1 is quite general advice, I will admit, but there's someone for everyone. I know it's simple, but like we're gonna call back to a classic here for a classic bit of advice, maybe a classic lesson, and we're gonna call back to GTA San Andreas. That's right. Remember CJ, the protagonist? CJ in San Andreas has different romantic interests throughout the game. There's several different people you can choose to date, and each of those people will have different preferences for CJ. Because unlike the other games, you're able to take CJ and actually work on him like you can work in real life. You can choose to go to the gym and spend time, doing press ups and hitting the exercise bike, or you could spend all your time at a Cluckin' Bell stuffing your face with fat chicken burgers, And whatever you decide to do as CJ, there are different girlfriends with those preferences. So one wants him like really muscly, one wants him as a larger build guy. Obviously, it's a really simple example. It's a really simple bit of advice. But what does it really mean? It means that no matter what you see in the mirror or how you feel about yourself, someone out there is into exactly what you have, what you're bringing to the table. So don't try to fit in to another person's ideal, right? Again, a bit like that Fight Club scene where they're looking up on the subway at like the underwear ad, and he's like, "Oh, that's real, huh? That's a real man." And it's like literally Brad Pitt saying it with an 8-pack, but that type of thing. Stand out. Contrast creates connection. Remember to be yourself. Okay, lesson 2. Moving on. This one, probably the most important lesson, to be perfectly honest, sandwiched right in here. This is that real love takes work. Again, super simple. I know it is way too often that we hear that love should be effortless. Love should be as easy as breathing in a fall breeze as you watch the leaves blow by. But that's not all there is to it, okay? In my eyes, the work of a relationship, it's not work like a second job. It's work like an investment in yourself. And again, for this one, I want to throw it over to Michael from The Good Place. Michael in The Good Place tells us that two people are initially attracted to each other. All right, what I like to refer to as the beauty and the banter phase, right? He's good looking, she's good looking, they make you laugh, stuff starts going. But then Michael says that really a relationship starts when those two people sit down and decide to put the work in together, decide to look at who they are and what they want and need, and that they're no longer going to face the world alone on a solo expedition, but that now they're going to join it as a united front, striving every day to be a better person and a closer version of the best version of themselves that their partner deserves to be with, you know? So just remember that whatever phase you're in, or if you're in the early days of a relationship, you're like 6 months or a year, even a year and a half or so in, the beauty and the banter phase is going to start to go. All right, you're going to see elements in your partner that like aren't the most ideal, right? For example, I used to be super hyper defensive. Like, again, I think a part of it was related to undiagnosed autism, which kind of takes a lot of things as like an attack when it's really just feedback. But I had to learn in my relationship that the habits I had learned over the course of my early life really were not serving me anymore. And every time we went to communicate about something about our relationship, I was kind of just not really hitting the brakes, but I was hitting this wall, and I was just taking everything so personally, and I was making everything a dramatic event that created a lot of like friction that we couldn't really move past. We had to just stop and figure out my emotions and stuff like that. So again, to sum up lesson 2, it takes real work. Okay? You become someone who's great to be with by showing up, improving, and choosing to be better for your partner and yourself. Every day it's a decision, every single day. Okay? And you just need to find someone who wants to make that decision for you, who you're worth it for. Okay. Let's move on to lesson 3. All right, now lesson 3, just as helpful, a little bit raw, okay, but I promise it's going to help. Like the therapist in Ted Lasso says, the truth is going to help, but it's going to piss you off first. So, lesson 3 is self-honesty. From this one, we're learning from Jeff in Community. Jeff tells us that 9 out of 10 lies are told 6 inches from the bathroom mirror, and that we do almost all of our lying alone. Okay? Now, I'd say that's fairly true. We lie to ourselves about stuff being other people's fault and not being our fault. We lie to ourselves that an issue that we have that we're needing to deal with and that is going to take work and attention just isn't there or will wrap up by itself. Again, this tip really comes down to actionable steps, okay? Small things you can actually do to improve your life right now. So it can be super simple, it just needs to be anything that is one going to obviously make you more attractive, more of a valuable option to a potential partner, and two, the main thing, it's going to make you feel better about yourself. See if you take the time today to write 3 small steps, right? And it could be like grooming, right? It could be, if you have a bit of a beard and it's just overgrown, it's kind of in your face. Obviously, it's in your face, but you know what I mean. Like it kind of gets a bit long around the mouth, and you kind of feel this extra weight. Maybe it's just that. It's just having a shave and feeling like a closer version of kind of who you feel you should be. Or maybe it's a bigger step, like finding clothes that more speak to who you are. This is like a baggy green thing, but it's got little elbow patches, which makes me feel nice, makes me feel more intelligent than I am. So therefore I'm wearing it. I'm wearing it because I'm doing like a educational advice type video, you know? So really, these small steps all add up, and honestly, I would highly advise if there's something you're interested in, something that maybe you've put down before or something that's been at the back of your head, to get into that thing. Small steps like helping your physical appearance or getting a daily affirmation for your mental health, super positive and is laying the better tracks for becoming who you want to be. But if you become interested in something in life, you become more interesting to other people. So it becomes less of a fight to think, what do I talk about? How do I relate to this person? Because you can talk about and relate whatever you're interested in. You're passionate about that in the way they're passionate about, working on cars or books or games or whatever it is. So that was a lot of stuff. That was a lot of honest self-talk, okay? So I want to wrap up today. I know that we're around 10 minutes, so let's wrap this up, let's conclude, and let's recap. 3 lessons, one at a time. Number 1, there are many kinds of people looking for many kinds of love. Number 2, it's not just about looks, it's about what you're building together. It's about the work. And number 3, if you're honest with yourself and willing to put in that effort, real, healthy love is possible. Even in this messy world, even in this horrible culture right now. So, I'm going to leave you with one last thing. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to write down 3 small things you could take today. Just like having a shave, or even changing your outfit, or maybe putting some items in a basket online, or something that is going to make you feel more positive, okay? I want you to just write 3 things down, and I want you to do one small action. Just one thing. That's it. And trust me, if you do that one thing, you're going to feel so positive about it. You're going to have such a dopamine rush because it's weight that you've been putting on yourself about not being happy, not being content, constantly asking, why aren't I having success here? And like the final thing I'll leave you with, if you're struggling in finding anything to write down on that list. You're just drawing a blank. Try to think, if you were someone that was interested in yourself, and that might be hard for you to imagine. You might have really low self-esteem, but you're obviously interested in other people. So just try to do your best ability to act for a wee second, like Ian McKellen, and pretend that you're someone who would be into your type of person. All right. Ask, why would they be interested in me? What do I have that draws someone in? And if you don't have a couple list of regular things, try to note down what is going against you, what you feel is deterring people, you know. And from hopefully that question, you should have a couple answers there on that page. And if you can pick one tiny action to move you forward, then you're in the right direction, my friend. You're moving at pace. And I'm proud of you. I'm really proud of you because it took me so long. I mean, I'm still ignoring stuff right now, today, but look, we're all works in progress. We're all just moving forward, aren't we? All right. So that is ourselves finished, my friends. This is kind of our first more advice video instead of just a podcast here on the Adam Dean channel and the Attempt to Understand podcast and Substack. So if you're still around, thank you very much for tuning in. Again, those are the three lessons that hopefully will give you some value today. There's someone out there for you. Love takes work. It all starts with being honest with yourself. All right. Keep going, people. You've got this. I believe in you. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Hey everyone. Today we are talking about something that I've personally struggled with quite a bit, to be honest, and it is imposter syndrome. If you've ever felt like you're not good enough or that you're just faking it until you're making it, then this video is for you. So what really happened with myself, what helped me overcome it, first of all, we'll start with something valuable. So what really helped me overcome imposter syndrome was experience. Just doing something over and over and over again. When I started working with people at my first proper job, adult job, that was something I had to get used to kind of new communication, speaking to adults for big job reasons and everything. And it was something that was very new to me. But actually, once I got into the flow of improving my skills, really seeing the results of my effort, then I started to feel more confident. Feedback obviously plays a huge role in that. And positive feedback, that helps. But for me, I was getting positive feedback in terms of the outcome of the work that I was doing, but it never really made me fully confident, It was really the constructive feedback that actually supported me in terms of not feeling like an imposter anymore. It was really the constructive feedback that pointed out areas that I could actually improve that really made the difference for me. So, in essence, the feedback gave me clarity. Okay. Instead of constantly worrying that I was making mistakes in every area or at every opportunity, it actually overviewed what I was doing and said, you're doing a good job, and it's here, here, and here that you could actually improve in these areas. And finally getting specific areas that I was making a mistake or I could better myself in, that actionable information actually really helped cure the imposter syndrome because, it kind of squashed the worry that I was just messing up all the time at every opportunity, So that made me feel a lot more in control. Once you get that experience, you can start to look back like I did and you can see how much you've grown, how much more organized and skilled at what you're doing and confident than when you had first initially started. And all of that progress right there, that in itself is proof that I'm not an imposter or that you're not an imposter. Just someone that's learning and trying to get better every single day. So look, if you're feeling stuck or if you're feeling unsure, remember that experience is really the best teacher. Again, obviously that was speaking in a professional setting. As a writer, as someone that's creative, I've definitely struggled with imposter syndrome as well. From the writing perspective and challenges, there's a lot of, what do you say? There's a lot of common conversation around. You don't need to be published to call yourself a writer. You don't need to have a book deal, or you don't need to do this or that. As long as you're creating to some extent with words and you're happy to express yourself in that way, or even just that you're doing it, then of course you can call yourself a writer. But for me, in my struggle with it, I was always outlining different projects. I was always getting an idea for a story and putting it in like the hero structure or some other story structure that I would get off of like a TikTok or something. And I would just spend time like plotting the story out in those parts, and then I would never really get to writing it because I would either feel overwhelmed by the idea of creating something that would like match my idea of perfection, or I would just move on. There's only so much my head would kind of like tell me, oh, you could be writing that right now, or you could be doing that right now, until eventually it got to the point that little voice just left my head. It was just gone. So really what helped in terms of writing and in terms of creative expression was a couple of things. Primarily, I think joining a writing class where I was around other new people who were new at the skill I was trying to do really helped. I think that honestly the main thing it done was giving me an anchor point, like a base level to judge myself. Again, that sounds bad, to judge myself, but really, and I know I shouldn't be talking about comparison either, but to essentially see where I was in terms of the people that had an interest in writing, like in terms of the beginners, where was I? And that really helped because there's people in that class that had never wrote anything before, that just saw like the ad online. They're like, yeah, let's do it. And then there's other people who have wrote different little pieces, parts of stories and stuff like that, similar to myself. So, that really helped in terms of giving myself kind of more measurable, accurate, like realistic portrayals of what someone trying to achieve my thing is doing. You know what I mean? So that really helped. The other big steps that really helped me, and I would say would help you, is I just started. I got a bit fed up of not having anything like online and just feeling like I was not part of the race, So I just wanted to get a rejection at one point. A big part of being a writer, part of like Stephen King's book, a very famous story, is he got a bunch of rejection slips and put them on a nail as he was growing up. And then as he got older and he kept writing, he kept getting rejected, that nail like literally fell off the wall because of how heavy it was from all the weight of the receipts, or like the mail rejections he got. And he just got a bigger nail and he just put it in. And it's that kind of attitude around rejection of just like, you have to get it. And rejection is obviously something that you deal with in any kind of artistic pursuit, because it's all about taste. But for me to just finally get rejected, I just wanted that to feel like I could closer identify as a writer, So honestly, I just went on to submittable.com, found some publication that was doing poems, and I submitted a couple old poems that I had around finished. The style didn't even match up, to be fair. Again, something I'd recommend, especially if you're paying for feedback, because I paid to submit this, and it was really just because the publication guaranteed like a reply and feedback. They guaranteed that you would actually get some lines about your writing back, and that's just what I wanted. I was just like, yeah, you'll give me a wee bit of feedback, I'm happy with that. Take my tenner or whatever it was. So I would definitely say if you're paying for feedback, make sure you're putting yourself in the right place. Make sure you're going forward to the right people about it. Because like art teachers, it kind of gets all muddled up in terms of people's own personal preferences versus a professional opinion. But again, taking that small step, just submitting that poem to the guy, knowing it was going to get rejected it a couple of days later, and I just felt so accomplished. I felt like I was finally in it with a ticket. honestly. And that really brings me on to the last thing, is I changed the structure of what I was creating. I stopped kind of plotting these big stories and started writing poems again. Started finishing little pieces of work and being able to finish small things, and actually say like, no, that is finished, at least for right now. That really helped, again, make me feel more like a writer. More like someone who is completing work and can put stuff out there. And obviously, I've taken this leap now in terms of putting some stuff online. So, um, like I said before, obviously experience. For me professionally within my job and for me within my artistic pursuits, the only thing that has helped is to get experience. Usually I have to just force myself to take a step. Like I said, I'll kind of hit a breaking point where it's like, oh, I just want to be rejected. So I find somewhere to apply and just make it happen. Again, similar to an attempt to understand, started the newsletter just because I kind of got so fed up of not doing anything. And I was like, I kind of like the title, let's just run with it. And being able to put that online, then I thought, I might as well just make videos off of this content. The videos can kind of promote the writing anyway. And then once I saw it as that, as like marketing for the other work, then I was like, right, off to the races, let's just try to do it. So look, in conclusion, guys, keep going, keep learning. That's the key thing, really. And trust the process. That's all you can really do. You're not an imposter. You are a work in progress, as we all are. All right. Look, let me know in the comments if you're related to this, if you felt imposter syndrome, or if you have any similar challenge that you think obviously this advice could relate to. Let's support each other in this, and I'll try to move forward in a more positive way. That's certainly what I'm going to try to do. All right, look, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time on An Attempt to Understand, and hope you have a great day. All right, bye-bye.